Whoa! Hey, everybody! Happy Friday! Jesse was like, "Hey, you need to get checkers on the show."
Absolutely.
Welcome everybody to this week's edition of Team Tim and Jesse. Again, we still got to figure that out. So, welcome to this week's edition of Jesse Miller from Power PSA with his co-host Tim and Tim. How's that? A little better?
I like it.
It's it's like almost 80 million degrees here in New Hampshire in the end of October. It's a little crazy. Like I'm like dying here. I took my air conditioner out. The sweat's pouring down my face. Like, all right, welcome. We've got some very special guests here today. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, NIST, National Institute of Standards and Technology 2.0, kind of some of those things. And MSSP, what's that? Like the acronym guy can't even spell it. Anyways, without further ado, Mr. Tim, say hello.
What's going on? Happy Friday. Excited for this episode. I went out and I was just joking. Carlos Guerrero, a little shout out. I think I found Gustavo. I think I found Maria, maybe even Jesse. He's the channel matchmaker. So, anyway, happy Friday. Tim Schnurr from Cavello, data discovery, data classification, data access. One of my big themes, which is coming up next week, which we'll remind you at the very end of the show, insider threat is something we're going to be talking about. But Uncle Jesse, why don't you go?
Hey, everyone. As you can see, it's not warm here. So I'm in Minnesota.
Your hat on, you're all bundled up.
I wanted to prove that it's actually cold here. We're going to be hitting freezing temps tonight, 25 degrees. So I was just complaining before the show about how I was running around the farm, fixing up all the things that I had been putting off for the last 3 months. And so I just got inside in time for the stream. So that's why I'm wearing my outside gear. So but Jesse Miller with Power PSA Consulting, we help MSPs build, scale, and profit from security programs.
Nice. Okay, Mr. Tim, you're up. You're running the show today.
I'm up. Okay, Maria. I put Maria onto the big window here, so her time to shine.
All right, I'll go. Tim says, "Hi, everybody. My name is Maria Graham. I am a senior account executive for a managed security service provider, MSSP, called Nuspire. So happy to be here. I got connected to Tim, like he said, via Carlos. So glad to be on the show."
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Gustavo, last up.
All right. Hello, everyone. Gustavo Mastroianni, Director of Security Programs and CISO at Cybersecurity. I pretty much thank you guys for inviting me to be part of the show. I'm looking forward to discuss this subject with you guys today.
Awesome.
Yeah,
awesome.
Fun stuff. So
Tim, remember what we used to do? We used to talk kind of like our mission and who we are. So I'm going to put that on you because I don't know where you were going, but maybe you're going there.
No. So mission, goals, and values. Is that what we're talking about? So, I don't know, Tim Golden, founder of soon-to-be Compliance Scorecard. We were compliance. We have an identity thing, right? We're working through this. So, founder of Compliance Risk, now to be Compliance Scorecard, where we are providing the only governance as a service platform built by an MSP for MSSPs. Just like yourself. Yeah, I mean, so I don't want to talk too much about myself. I just want to dive into like this whole concept of like NIST and governance and risk. And as we always talk about here, shift left. What does that look like coming from, very, I would like to use the word mature MSPs like yourself. So I don't know, maybe talk a little bit about like what you guys are doing, what sets you apart, what are some of your like, why would I pick an MSSSSSP versus, sorry. Yeah, sorry. All right. So there you are.
Gustavo, yeah, let's fire it up. Talk about, what you guys do. Obviously, this show is really focused on left of boom. So we won't really delve into, SOC services, SIM services, detection response, but really that hardening and posture, right? Like, and in a little bit, we'll get into NIST 2.0. So talk about your role, some of the things you're up to.
All right. So Cyber74, we provide managed security services for MSPs or end clients. We do have SOC and SIEM solutions. We do have, but our main offering is about security program. Security program, as you know, it's not only about the tools, but it's also about how you leverage those tools that you choose to be part of your security program and the services that you provide with those tools. So for us, it's very important to make sure that our clients are being secure. As you know, any tool may fail at the end of the day, may not detect, may not protect. So having that kind of a defense in depth type of approach within a security program is very important to ensure that our clients are protected as much as possible, and we are also able to detect as quickly as possible and respond to any kind of a security event or incident as quickly as possible as well. So for us, it's very important to know that the client is on board with that, and there are different pieces of a security program. As we're going to talk about it today, NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0, our security program involves all of the control families, which also includes the new control family, which is governed, and that one is it's where the vCISO comes in and ensure that a security program is being effective, and also keep people accountable on the findings or the sub programs. Let's call it, like, for example, the vulnerability management program, which could be under a security program as well. So those are the main things that we do at Cyber74. Besides security and risk assessments, pen tests, and CMMC and HIPAA compliance and all of that, our managed security services are pretty much SOC and SIEM solution and security programs.
Jesse, talk about, I caught something in there, and he said govern of NIST 2.0. We're already jumping into NIST 2.0 here. And Jesse's the vCISO doctor.
Great. Let's give Maria an opportunity to talk a little bit about what they're doing over there, about this kind of stuff. Like, still the limelight, quick, before I keep talking.
Let me add it. Okay, yeah. So very similar to Gustavo's organization, we are a managed security service provider. SIM and SOC stuff off to the side. We're not here to talk about that, but we do have all of that kind of capabilities. But when we're talking about more of the governance side of the house or the virtual CISO side of the house, that's where we align with different frameworks, NIST being one of them. And one of the things I think that we do a little bit differently is, while we have that kind of capability to provide people with those posture assessments, make sure they're aligned with different frameworks, we've always included governance as part of those posture assessments, even when aligning with NIST, because if you don't have, and one of our virtual CISOs, Mike Pedrick is one of those guys, Jesse, that we were talking about. But if you don't have governance, you have all these tools, you have all this stuff, it doesn't matter. You have to have oversight into what you're doing with your program overall. And then I think another thing that we do a little bit differently is we provide anyone access to a tool within our platform called My Nuspire that is a self-assessment aligned with the frameworks to help them go in and do a self-assessment and gauge their maturity level with the controls that are outlined there. And so we have a lot of folks that kind of come to us because of that. But then we have folks that sign on with Nuspire for a variety of different things, and they continue to leverage that platform to help them kind of gauge the maturity of their program and track their improvements over time.
So wait a minute, hold on. So first and foremost, you kept saying vCISO. We all know how I feel about that. So
I'm sorry.
It's good. I get it.
I'm Team vCISO over here.
I know you are.
Keep going.
Yeah. And I'm Team Fractional CISO. So Jesse and I are going to duke it out at IT Nation and see which one actually wins, right? So, but actually, our friend Keith over here in chat is bringing up some really good points, right? And so, we're talking a lot of like ones and zeros and bits and socks and seams and this and NISTs and that. The reality is that being able to have those business conversations, right? Being able to like he says here, like, it's not just a solution, but be able to have the process, and even more so the people, right? And our multiple SP company, multiple MSP company, whatever you want to call that, MSSP, we would never do anything unless we had a champion, a human and putting them, like, I don't want to say in charge, but having them be the champion of the project, right? Regardless of whatever it was that we were doing for our clients, it was always important to have that human at the client as we liaise with them to become that champion, right? That buy-in and the why behind it all. So I want
to jump in and say something that, as you guys know, I am very, I like to distill things or boil them down. And so I have a saying I'm very fond of, which I think we're all circling a bit, and it's really tactics over tools, right? So I think you can have different software platforms, and those are necessary. You need your software platforms to be able to track, manage, organize the work. But at the end of the day, those are secondary to, as you said, Tim, Gustavo, and everyone else, they're secondary to the people running the program and the processes that are in place, right? So I think that's paramount. And, bottom line, tactics over tools, I think, is the thrust that should be anyone's first piece when they're building their VCSO program. Sorry, Tim.
No, you're good. And I just want to give a quick shout out to let people know, like, Steve, good to see you. Kevin Harding, wow, it's awesome to have you here. I know you kind of linger on in the background from time to time. Keith, obviously, Sean's pseudo dad. Keith, hopefully we'll see you at IT Nation. And Heather, Heath. Thanks, everybody, for showing up. Feel free to keep dumping your questions over there in the chat so that, we can keep tripping.
Yeah, good ones.
Yeah. And Marie, I want to go back just real quick to you in what you were talking about with Mike. He's got this whole series, Mike Pedrick. So I'm keep bringing his name up, but I really enjoy what he's putting out on LinkedIn. I think you guys should give him a follow if you aren't. He has this kind of thing that he talks about, build a better customer, but it's really about building our systems and processes better. So yes. Maria, maybe talk a little bit about that and kind of how that approach that you guys take to security programs.
I love that series he's doing. I love when he shared the concept with me, I was like, go for it. So I think what he's trying to articulate there, and I think it's largely about the way that we go to market as an MSSP or a managed security service provider is to all of your point, you have to go in and understand one, who's your champion and all that, because you have to have somebody that's going to help you understand first the business processes, what critical things are required to run the business so we know how to best secure them. We have to understand existing processes. We have to have an understanding of what their vision is for a successful partnership and whatever type of relationship we're forming with them. We have to understand all of that. We have to understand what they've invested in already from a technology platform stack. How are they leveraging it? Are they leveraging it well? Is there overlap? Could we integrate some stuff? We have to understand how they want us to jump in as an extension of their team, but then set the right expectations with them as the client as to kind of like what that means. And if you don't do all of those things first, and that is before they don't even know what I do. We're just trying to figure you out, right? If we don't do all of that and understand all of that very, very, very well, then there's no possible way I can sell any type of service or do anything to drive any outcomes that are going to drive change for the organization or help you understand where your risk is. And if you don't understand where the risk is and understand the business's risk appetite, you're gonna fail every single time. And I think that's a lot of what's behind those posts that Mike puts out.
That was really good. I'm gonna go back and listen to those points. I don't know if it was 7 points or 6 points or 10 points, but
you got the sales lady
the whole way.
I'm a Gabby.
Expectations.
I want Gustavo
7 point
vision.
I heard Gustavo say something relating to that, right? So like Maria just talked about it. That's exactly what you want. And there is some friction that I've run into in the past coming in as a VC. So when people the customer wants to immediately know, well, where's our risk? Give us our deliverables. And they kind of jump the gun. So Gustavo, what are some techniques that you guys use you talked about identifying those are the type of customers you want to work with, and that perked my ears up. That's some ICP talk, ideal customer profile, which I really like. So talk a little bit about identifying those customers in the sales cycle and the sales process and how you approach that.
Well, to me, when you start a conversation with any potential clients, you have to make sure that they are invested into making things happen. If they're not invested, if they are just looking to be secure or they just want some kind of a protection, that's fine. But you gotta know, you gotta explain to them that, hey, it's your business. You have to make sure that we first understand your business, as Maria was mentioning, and then come in and assess your environment, and from that point on, start to providing you with all of the findings and how we would tackle those findings. But at identifying the customers and making sure that he has that two-way commitment between the organization, between the MSSP and the client, that's the key important. I would say it's the most important thing when you start a security program within an organization. It's similarly when you are the CISO of an organization, an actual CISO, and you have to get the buy-in from not only from the stakeholders and your peers, but also everyone down the chain, because security is something that everyone needs to be aware of, and it's a commitment that everyone needs to be part of as well. So again, that identification, as you are mentioning, it's important at the beginning of the sales cycle. So you will see how successful that company will be when you implement a security program.
All right, so I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do it. Unless Jesse, you have something, or Tim. Yes.
No. I could keep going. Like you know me. This is like in my wheelhouse. So I'll just go the whole hour.
Great,
but
Tim.
let's let some other people talk.
Bringing Maria up, right? So Maria, I understand that part of your role there is the sales part, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm Johnny's Lug Nut Factory. I am a defense contractor. I can't stand this whole CMMC stuff. Pitch me.
Tell me a pencil.
Wow.
You don't pitch. You don't pitch. That's the problem.
Exactly.
That's what it is.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and the reason why I'm doing this is because we have a lot of MSPs that follow us, that want to learn from us, that want to shift left from us. And actually that shift left starts with that sales cycle. Starts with that understanding that business, right? I'm not going to go into a Johnny's Lug Nut Factory and start talking about SOC, SIEM, SOAR, CMMC, and all the other stuff, right? I'm going to come into that. So how would I do that, right? So we want to be able to like take our show and offer some tangible stuff, right? So I'm not a salesperson, and well, Tim is, but I'm not. And so like, great, I'm an MSP and I know this stuff cold. I've been FedRAMP moderate, like, how do I do that? What do I do? What's a good nugget for you as the sales expert here to bring something to help our clients?
I think there's a few things. The first is don't pitch. I think I don't know, and Tim, I'd love your thoughts on this, but there's been a paradigm shift in buyers' behaviors in the last 18 months. Unless they want to talk to you, you're not talking to them. That is just that's what's going to happen. So if somebody's going to talk to you, they're more than likely have already identified their problem. They know what is challenging them. They've understood a pain point. There's the internet that they can go find information from. They're crowdsourcing, ideas for fixes and all that kind of stuff. So it's largely, if you're still somebody that's out there hard pitching, you're not. That's bad. Don't do that. Go in and just say, why are you talking to me today? And then let them tell you what they're talking to you about, or what are their challenges, or what's your roadmap, or what are you trying to solve for, and get to the point. Figure out, can you help them? Can you not help them? Okay, so you said you're a lug nuts company. It's manufacturing. You're a defense contract, and you hate CMMC. What about CMMC do you hate? Let's start there. Is it that you have to comply with it? Is it that you don't understand it? Is it that you have to align to it? Like, and all of those things, right? But then dig into it and then figure out how you can align with it. Make sure you've done your homework. I'm just going to say that. Do your homework, understand situational fluency in the industries that they're in and how that particular thing might affect them and impact them. And then the first thing you do with all of that is come in there, show that you know your stuff, and you build trust quickly. People buy on like three things. There's emotions, there's logical, and there's trust, right? So you have to do all that in the very first conversation. If you don't do that, then I can never bring Gustavo in to talk to you about how the heck we're going to fix it.
Right.
So that's what you got to do, I think, if that makes sense.
That's a good one, Kevin. The customer dream out.
And that was the Marnie. Remember that, Tim? The Q to A ratio. If you're talking and you're pitching, you're losing. And Maria said that right. You're asking very good questions, right? Like, so what's up? What do you not understand about talking? Yeah, why am I talking?
I think you're right about the shift too. Top of funnel isn't even a thing anymore, right?
No, because it's quick. It gets in and then it's done.
And so the whole like put in your email so we can get an MQL, a marketing qualified lead, for us to start a drip campaign with you. No, take the gates off those things, give your playbooks, give your collateral, let people get intricate with your ecosystem, right? And start to build that trust before you ever have a conversation. And when they're ready, they'll reach out. And if they don't, they're not a good qualified customer for you. So you almost leapfrog that stage in the buying journey of top of funnel and then kind of middle funnel too. And you're already dealing with a bottom middle to bottom funnel customer, which I think is huge. And I think it's I actually enjoy that shift.
Me too. Listen, I hated the days of having to get on a phone call and spray and pray and figure, like, was dumb.
Right.
I hated that. But and it's kind of gone both ways though too, because I've noticed in the past you would get a lot of people that would get on a call with a vendor and they can't buy, they have no intention of buying. You're spending 30 minutes with me, you can do nothing. And you could have read all that on the internet. So, and that doesn't happen anymore either, which is kind of nice because that is a waste of my time too. So, but I think it's all a relationship building too, in terms of it's who you know.
All right, so you're making really great points, right? Listen to the customer, build that know, like, trust factor, right? These are all good things. So I'm going to tell you a little story. Okay, we've been dealing with FedRAMP Moderate 853. We kind of got our stuff together on MSP. Fine. So there's an organization here in the state that has large defense contracts that works with another MSP in the state that is looking to shift. So, okay, the sales call, I start to get on a conversation. I talk a little bit about who we do, but I want to understand their pain points. We go through the pain points part. Great. Then I get the next conversation and it's the governance team. And then the next conversation, it's the CEO, the executive team. And I literally spent, 20 to 25 hours over the course of, a month or two having some conversations about the services. My first mistake was I should have stopped after the second call, but I didn't because that's who I am, educating and helping. By the time I was all done and I put the quote together and I presented them online with the quote, crickets for weeks. Finally, they got back to me and was like, oh, we just decided to take all the information that you'd educated us on and stay with our existing partner. So the takeaway from there is work with the clients and the prospects, but give them just enough.
That's a
lesson I learned was I lost 20 hours.
One of the
you know what you did though? You built consensus. You educated the entire organization and you built consensus, and they were like, I think 9 out of 10 times they actually will go with you. They're like, this is stupid, so anyway, go ahead, Maria.
You have to make sure too early, because losing early is just as rewarding as winning, in my opinion. So very early on, you want to make sure that you understand power and what the compelling reason to act is. So what would have been the reason for them to move from that other provider or whatever, and make sure we're tracking that through the. But I hate when that happens, Tim. Yeah. It's not fun.
Yeah, I was.
And you said something about federal contracts, and I mean that's just like they don't operate under like typical business fashion and methods. They're like,
So we're about halfway through here, coming up on like the halfway point. I know we kind of wanted to get into the new NIST framework and the new NIST 2.0, which, hey, governance is a new domain. Tim, you want to pull that up real quick? I'm going to kind of show this real quick.
Yeah, there we go.
So NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, for those in the back, Tim, finally, after probably several years, has now finally realized that governing, or the governance functions, the people and the process part, has been missing. Right. And so they're actually adding a whole new governance domain as part of the 2.0 framework. Right. And so it's out for public comment. We know how the government works. They have to put things out for public comment, distill those comments, and then put it out there. But the reality is governance is coming. And I've been saying for years that it's here now. They just haven't really put it out there, but it's here. And so what does that mean? Either Maria or Tim or Augusto, any one of you, what does that mean when we think about govern or governance? You can go ahead and put that down.
I'm going to have a little bit of an unorthodox answer to this. So when I think about when you think about the old NIST 1.0 and you have NIST 2.0, you have all these great things, right? Like, but it doesn't talk about who's going to do them, right? And like who's empowered, who's going to do them, who's going to actually do the work. I think a lot of it is like really just orchestrating, like who does what, who's empowered, who calls the shots, who's the referee, stealing a term from Tim, right? You know, and who actually needs to be educated to do the things, and a little bit of this project management, like how much of this framework is going to get like run through Jira and like on a typical weekly Scrum, and we're going to be like, oh, where are we? What are we doing? Right? So that's one thing I just noticed. There was really nothing there to say like, all right, now we're empowered. Who's going to do it? Who's going to do that? And this is going to roll up to what Brad Gross was talking about a little bit the other day about like the SEC and people signing off on like the financials. People are going to have to sign off on your security program, and like that's all really built into that governance. So that was a lot, but
well. Yeah, and I'd love to hear from Gustavo. Let's just say we're past the sales cycle now, right? And we're onboarding a client, right? What are the steps you're taking in those first 30 days as the VCSO to, number one, realign and make sure you're aligned with the customer's expectations of the engagement? And then what are some of those pragmatic principles that you use to set up your governance program, like Tim was talking about, because there isn't sort of any prescriptive approach? So what are some pragmatic, maybe top 5 things you do with the customer?
Well, one of the things that you have to do when you come in is to identify roles and responsibilities within the organization that you're working for, right? And you got to know who is the network guy, who is the server person, who is who works for the help desk, and all of that. So ensuring that you identify those people, it's just as important as identifying the assets that you're going to protect, right? Because you can only protect what you know. If you don't know if something exists, you can't protect that. So that's also part of it's part of the NIST cybersecurity framework, the identify function. But it's also, there is a sub part of that where the govern function that was created by that's going to be created. It's in draft mode right now for the cybersecurity framework. Along with that, what are the policies? Is there any policy in place? Is there Did
I hear policy? Okay.
So
you're my new best friend.
Yeah. While identifying the assets, you got to know how critical those assets are. That's why you have the BIA, the business impact analysis. If the thing hits the fan, how you're going to respond to an instant IRP, instant response plan. If things are already happening, how you're going to recover your business from a disaster recovery plan. Or even that, in the middle of disaster, how you can keep your business going with the business continuity plan. So all of those 4 things, which is part of the policies and procedures, are very important for any organization to have it when you come in. So those are the main things that I do when I come into a new client. I try to help them to help me identify those things that will help my job to be easier when implementing the security program and making sure that I keep those people accountable on the findings and making sure that all of the security controls are being implemented, and monitor those security controls to make sure that it's just not there and set and forget it, but instead it's set it and monitor it.
See, I mean, I could talk this stuff all day long, right? Because that's my background, right? But this whole concept of continuous, ongoing monitoring of stuff is what we've been seeing in our federal clients for years. It's starting to come downstream into local municipalities and even businesses as well, right? There were just CISA put out not too long ago the reporting requirements, right? And all this stuff is starting to like culminate together finally around, at the end of the day, it's building that defensibility in your business, right? As you said it a few minutes ago, right? What do you have for your documentation? What can you prove that you're doing? Have you taught the people on these things? It's all about when boom happens. Have I done my due care? Have I done my due diligence and built the defensibility in my business? And I have the documentation and the tools and the things to prove that we're doing that, right? I'm going to pose a question over to Maria, right? So this governance thing is coming. You're since you're part of the sales team over there, right? Do you hear any of those kinds of words, or are you talking about any of that kind of stuff with your clients? Do they get the word govern or the word governance? Because I tell you, 6 months ago, MSPs had no idea what the word meant, and now they're kind of starting to get it.
Small businesses
No,
too, right? So
yeah. No, I mean, we hear governance. I have heard it for years, just because of our bench of people that we have providing the fractional or virtual, whatever you guys want to call it. I don't want to argue. CISO services.
Choose one.
But what I will tell you is, with current clients, they are pumped about this because a lot of the work that we do is within like manufacturing, lean margins. They don't have big cybersecurity budgets or whatever, and a lot of leadership groups, security to them is more of like a compliance. And it's not the same, right? And with governance, now there has to be oversight into what you're doing, and there has to be accountability into what they're doing, and it's helping them. They're excited because it's going to help them be able to ultimately mature a lot of the processes that they have in place with their security program overall, and instead of having to be forced to buy something to check a box, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I see Jesse keep wanting to chime in, so I'll shut up.
No, I was just going to say, I think that is spot on. And again, they may not call it governance, but when you start talking about corporate governance with manufacturing and organizations like that, they get corporate oversight and corporate governance. And you just say, this is another,
it's a component. It's
yeah,
the same
exactly.
thing.
Right. And so, okay, that makes sense. Now educate me, show me how we do it, and give me the not the easy button, but give me the prescription for how we do this, and we're on board, right? So it's an easier discussion.
You want the easy button?
So I got a question. Yeah, so MSSPs, managed security service, whatever we want to call them, outsourced security, outsourced IT. So you just mentioned corporate governance. There's no real outsourced corporate governance as far as I know. How do you, and this is probably for Maria, really, is like, how do you tiptoe there, and how do you drive governance, drive change, drive implementation, right? Security is a frictionless thing. So how do you, as an outsourced security provider, how do you get that done? So I just you
have to have a seat. You have to have a seat at the table with them. You're on their team. You're a part of their team. You're an extension of their team. If somebody's contracting with somebody like me and they don't want to do that, I'm not a good fit for you, man, because we're not a set it and forget it provider. Nobody like us is. We have to be treated as a member of the team. We have to have access to the correct people within the executive leadership team to have business conversations. We have to be, you're buying people. You're buying people to help you with this. That's what you're buying when you're contracting with somebody like us.
Hence my fractional as opposed to virtual.
Yeah.
Well, you can.
You make a really good point, right?
Well, I think
I need to get my voiceover voice out.
There's only one
so we did talk about a couple of weeks ago with Wes Spencer about getting a seat at the table, right? And and as we've talked a lot about here, like building that like trust factor here with our clients, right? It comes down to relatability, right? When I think of governance, they're already doing it in other parts of their business. They just don't recognize they should be, or possibly should be, doing it in the technology side, right? How many of these businesses have you talked to have an employee handbook, having an equal opportunity thing, right? Around, hiring, having a thing around, firing, like the HR side, right? So we actually really like to work with the HR people because they get it.
So do we.
And they're already in the company, and they're already like and they're established in the company and
Mhm.
have that rapport. Like, we love talking to HR people because they get it. And now we just pivot them to another business unit or another business, component.
Well, what do they
So,
say?
some of
Misery
yeah.
loves company.
Yeah, some of our
HR and cyber both despised by the organization.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, they don't. HR is usually outsourced as well. So I mean, mid-sized businesses, it really depends. So
Yeah.
So, Gustavo, you've been quiet, like, and Tim just mentioned we had Wes on, and that's something we love to talk about, is getting a seat at the table and asking those questions. You were talking about that earlier, about learning the business. Any other thoughts on that, or walk you through, kind of walk us through like a typical engagement where you really learn a business and just how it goes, and where do you find hangups? Where are some of the as you said, the friction's been of actually getting people on board with this?
Great question.
Yeah, usually in the beginning, there's always friction, right? Because you're the new guy on the block, new kid on the block, and you're trying to get things done, right? So, but if you get support from the existing stakeholders, the C-level, that helps to ensure that the people who will execute on the plan, they are on board with you. And also, you have to be a leader and ensure and how to lead those people and using them at the best of their capabilities. And at the end of the day, because that's the only way that you get things done. And also, when you're dealing with the C-level or the stakeholders, it's always important to ensure that you are there to present them the risk and how you are going to manage that risk, and present them, hey, this is where I think our risk appetite is at, and this is what our risk tolerance is. Let's make sure that we choose one of those 4 types of risks, right? Risk mitigation, risk avoidance, so on and so forth. But you also, as I said, you also have to keep monitoring those risks. Let's say that they accept a risk at some point. You can't forget that risk, and because that risk can have a greater risk in 6 months later. So that's also part of the cycle of the risk management program, which is embedded into any kind of a V or fractional CISO management program or under a security program. That you need to make sure that those risks are being reassessed over and over again with your C-level and stakeholders. And again, at the end of the day, that's how I see it. And the only thing that I would say the main thing that I've been, there's a friction when you come in. It's pretty much getting to know the people who will be part of the program, and also understand that you are there to help them. You're there to help the organization. So that's how I see it. That's how I see the security program when I come into an organization to help them.
You said something really important, I think, that I want to zero in on. And you mentioned about it's your job to present them with the risks based on what you believe the risk tolerance of the business is. And I think we saw a comment pop up from a user that said, isn't it the business's job to own the risks? And I think that is really important. Because, and I know I'll speak from my personal experiences, starting from a place of extreme, deep technical background. I think everyone goes through that sophomoric stage in their career where they're very dogmatic about, we need to have all the security controls in place, and understanding that, not getting offended when people don't take your recommendations, right? Saying, okay, here's the risk. I think you should do this. And they say, well, we don't want to do that because we don't believe it's this high of a risk, and we're going to accept this risk. And being a little bit like water, like Bruce Lee, right? Like, okay, that's fine. We'll take that and we'll do what we can with it. And then at the end of the day, if they've accepted that risk and they're the ones owning it and making the decision, if something happens, again, not an I told you so, but hey, let's get this fixed. Let's reassess. And a very flat and even type of measured response to all those kinds of things can help eliminate that friction. And I think you really make yourself a partner at that point. So I love that you brought that up, Gustavo.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, there's some radicals. If you've ever managed a group of developers, which Tim is doing that right now, we're going to do it this way. Well, is that the only way you know how to do it, or is you're just like this radical that only uses open source technology? Well, we're building software to sell here and secure.
Yeah. There's one that comes to mind. We did this. One of the MSPs I worked at did the risk assessment, as a current client of the IT side of the business, presented them with, hey, here's the things we think you need to do, X, Y, and Z. And they said, no, we have our own internal staff. We can handle it. And we understand the risks, but we're going to make this decision. Right. And they ended up getting ransomware. And it was a really large incident about 6 months later. And so, everyone hears that and they're like, oh, they should have listened. I'm like, I wasn't even really that mad about it, because the business, they didn't come at us and say, why didn't you guys protect us? They knew the risks, they accepted the risks, and they had to deal with the fallout, and we got paid to help them fix the fallout. And it was very lucrative for our organization. So how can you be mad about that? It's just another set in the stage. And then, of course, after the fact, they go with our services. but again, being mad about that, like, oh, how could they do that? Well, they knew the risks, they accepted the risks, and that's the consequences. And then we just help them work through it. So it's, it doesn't have to be so emotional, although I get that it is, because you're in the middle of an incident. Trying to remove that as much as possible, I think, is a really good skill to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can definitely say, like, risk management, risk transference, risk deference, like, you've heard me say this 1,000 times. Today, MSPs and MSSPs own too much of the risk, period. Mm-hmm. I would say, in fact, they probably own most of the risk, if not all of the risk, because they're not working with their clients to shift that risk back to the client where it rightfully belongs. Mm-hmm. Now, we might yell and scream, 2FA, 2FA, and the client might be like, CEO doesn't want it. Well, great. Grab your lawyer, create language in your contracts that say, you don't want to do this. We're going to shift that risk onto you and make you own that, not us. Right. And so that's something that's missing everywhere, is for MSPs to easily transfer, defer, or shift that risk back to their clients.
Yeah.
Well, it's why it's really important you have like a risk register as the provider that you're outlining, documenting all of this stuff. And then, and I have no problem when a client says to me, when I say, hey, this is the incident that we just went through. It wasn't major, but you might want to look at this so that it doesn't happen again. And now it's on you to make that decision. I document it. We come to an agreement. If you don't want to do it, it's documented. We move on, but we keep track of that stuff. We revisit it every month during our security reviews so that we're all understanding where the risk is at. And I think that if that's not something people are doing, that's really, really important. And I also think I was going to say something to you, Jesse, about when somebody says no and you can't get that mad about it. I hate what happens, and I think this governance thing is going to shift this a little bit, is when the champion knows that the risk is much larger than what the executive level team understands it to be.
Yeah.
And now governance is going to help with that, because now it's a company wide, it has to be spread across the organization to make these types of decisions. And I think we're going to start being able to see, instead of just being told no because there's no budget or it doesn't seem that big, and you see this poor champion going, oh my God, it's going to be so bad if something happens though. I think we're going to see less of that with the new governance stuff. I think that's really positive. Yeah,
I agree. The new SEC rules about the board having to be aware of risk, and people were like, oh, everyone got really excited, like the CISOs are going to get seats on the board. Now I'm like, probably not. but you get a seat at the table. Here's the thing:
you'll seat at the table.
I don't honestly. I don't want to sit on the board. That's taking me off of my mission as a CISO, right? But what I do like is being able to have direct influence. Now they'll listen, right? So you say, okay, you're responsible. Like you said, Maria, that's it, right? Here's the risk. You have to vouch for this risk. You have to accept this risk on yourself that you're making this decision. Like you can't pass it off anymore. And so there's more of a direct line of responsibility. So I guess it's almost a great position to be in, is not the weight of the responsibility as much, but more influence to be able to affect change within the organization. So I agree. I think it's really positive development.
Or just even have a dialogue about it. Whereas before it was, here's your 3 security slides, nobody talks about it, and we move on. Now there's like, hey guys, we actually have to talk about this stuff now.
A lot more
Exactly.
questions. You're right about that. In the last 6 months, like there's actual questions and discussions and everything else happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the fact that dialogue is happening, right? I mean, y'all know I've been living this for 20 years and I'm like yelling at the top, it's like spitting into the wind and nothing. Well, maybe now it's starting to come back to me, but it's great that these conversations are happening. As we shift into the last 15, 20 minutes here, Tim or Jet, like, do you guys have, I know we have a couple of other questions, Barry.
Well, I have, you saw my rejection con entrance. I think you did, Tim, right? Like, why don't most MSPs? I mean, I look at thousands of MSPs and MSSPs websites, and MSSPs. I mean, you guys are clearly more advanced and savvy, but risk is not a word that's even brought up. And Jesse and I have had multiple drinks of talking about risk and like how that word is not really well understood by small and medium-sized businesses. And it's really just that thought process of like unearthing risks and talking about risks. I had a post maybe a year ago. I was like looking at Blockbuster's 10K, and in any kind of SEC filing, they're going to talk about risk specifically. And small and medium-sized businesses never go through that process. Like, let's just sit around in a room and think about what if like this happened, what if that happened, like how bad is it going to be? How do we manage that? How do we mitigate it? Right? How do we do the steps that Gustavo mentioned, right? How do we avoid it? How do we transfer it for cyber insurance, right? They don't really go through that. So I think even if it's cybersecurity risk or just risks in the business, like just you being in there, Maria, like being the voice of reason, talking about like how you kind of think through this, I think you really earn that trust, gain that seat at the table, like you mentioned. So I hope we continue to talk about what we've, in the last 20 minutes has really been about risk management and just like how you identify it, how you quantify it, and then, how you're going to deal with it. So I think it's great. Jessica.
Interesting thought. I'm going to pose this. I'm going to throw this out there and everyone can give their answer. Is governance really just risk management?
Say that again.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's hear it.
I would say it's part of it,
I don't think
not
so. Yeah.
not just risk management.
Okay.
No.
I think it's going back to what my colleague Mike said, but I think it's understanding risk, definitely, but then having some sort of leadership oversight. That's what it is to me.
Right. So one tag onto what you were saying, Tim. FAIR is a standard for I love it.
Yeah.
Is FAIR is a standard that that is used for measuring risk, and it talks about 6 kinds of loss. So we talk about MSPs are talking about risk with their clients. That's a way you can bring that up and talk about those 6 kinds of loss, right? Loss of productivity. You can't deliver goods or services. The response losses, the money you spend on incident response, the replacement. The systems you have to buy or the tools you have to buy or the things you have to replace after an incident, fines and judgments. Well, that's self-explanatory. Competitive advantage loss. Your competitors can use that as a bludgeon against you for the next year while it's still, fresh in people's minds. And then the same thing with reputation. Now, those last 2 are temporary, but they still put you behind and set you back in terms of the landscape of your competition. And so I think if you start talking about those things with your clients, you're getting them to talk about risk and think about risk to their business from cyber incidents, but you're maybe not using those words for it. And those are just easy conversation starters to be like, well, what do you think about all those 6 things? How would they have an effect on your business?
Yeah.
And it's so interesting when you ask those. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say SWOT analysis, strengths, threats.
Well, and it's interesting when you ask those questions to different people within the organization, right? So that you can understand the pain chain. Because if you ask a CFO what's the most important, it's going to be very different from what the COO says. And it's going to be totally different from what the CISO says. And it's going to be very different than what I, as the person generating revenue, says. And it's really interesting if you can build that pain chain. It helps you with the narrative for whatever you're trying to do to help measure or to help mitigate the risk is what I've found.
Yep.
I love that pain chain. I'm going to use that, right? That
pain chain.
It's got a good ring to it. So, Jesse, you were talking about the 4 types of loss. I'm just going to dump that in the comments for people they have that. along the way. So as you probably see me over here, I'm quadruple tasking with 4 monitors. So don't worry too much about me. Carry the weight while I'm doing stuff.
Yeah, so I'm going to ask Gustavo another question
4?
that's a little bit for us. You know, we're talking on IT Nation metrics that matter to non-technical business owners, right? So Gustavo, how do you justify your ROI? How do you justify progress or evidence progress of what you're doing with clients?
So a few things. One of the things that Maria mentioned is the risk register. We call it POAM doc, for example, the plan of action and milestone. So you show them progress on that POAM doc, but also you have to show them the value of the services that you are providing to them in a quarterly business review, where it's not only about security, but also how your business is doing in terms of security and how the MSSP is helping you to achieve those goals, showing them the key KPIs or KRIs, right? The key registers. And that helps the business to understand how they are doing and how to better integrate security across the whole organization. So the ROI at the end of the day will show them, hey, you're paying, let's say, $3,000 a month for MSS services, managed security services. Am I getting back that return on investment in terms of I'm pushing the ransomware away, I'm pushing the bad guys away, and I'm also, if there is anything going on, is the MSSP acting as quickly as possible to stop that kind of malicious activity that is going on? And also, is the MSSP also enforcing the policies and the procedures and the people, process, and technology across the organization? Like Tim Golden was saying, is the CEO using MFA or not? Right? So that's also part of the ROI. If you got the CEO to use MFA after there was a lot of pushback, that's a win. So that's how I see the ROI. That there are a lot of intangibles, but there are some tangibles as well that you can put into the quarterly business review with your client to ensure that, hey, I'm doing something here. I'm not just looking at the screen and seeing alerts popping in and popping out. I'm actually acting and ensuring that your cybersecurity material level is going up instead of being in stale mode or just dropping down according to the threat landscape that it's out there. Because as you know, every day something new happens. So the threat landscape is always changing. It's an ever-changing thing. So you gotta be aware of what's going on out there and implement that into your security program.
Love it. Well, the adoption, as you said, like what's the uptake of new controls and policies, or maybe it's CIS controls, maybe it's technical controls. So I love it. You're just showing that hardening or posture over a period of time. So Maria, anything to add? I don't know, that it's usually a tough question, right?
Yeah.
Like, what? Because the board is always like, hey, why
what's the ROI of an MSSP? I think just because a lot for me, I'm not having to do it while I'm in it necessarily. I know what we do to help with that, but I think a lot of it is going to boil down to what we keep going back to: understanding the business, understanding the risks, and explaining in language that they're familiar with, or in language using their vernacular and terminology that they're familiar with for how they talk about other areas of risk in the business. That's what you're mitigating when you hire somebody like Nuspire. And then once you're onboarded, it's back to what Gustavo was saying with the KPI metrics. If they're doing managed services, right? Like, here's how many tickets, here's how many things, and here's how many people you would have had to staff to do this on your own, blah, blah, blah. That's ROI, right? That's really easy. But what you really got to focus on, again, is being able to show those continuous improvements over time that you're making as you're chipping away to the security program and beating into the mindsets of the people you're presenting to that it is a journey and not a destination. So it's never going to stop, and you're going to have to keep evolving. and doing that in language that they understand. We have one customer that makes us do everything in the price of pizzas because they're a national pizza chain. So like, that's fine. We will do it in the price of pizzas. Like, you know what I'm saying? So, but like doing it in a way that they understand is also very, very important.
Yeah,
well, that's the thing.
That's awesome.
Like being able
and that's
to
our
relate
title up
to
there,
that.
Tim, right? That's cybersecurity programs, not tools. So that's
Right.
the big difference. The tools, if you're reselling tools, there's not a lot of progress.
Exactly.
Well,
that's,
and I'd be curious to. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, echo what you were saying. It's relatability, right? Talk to me in pizza. Talk to me in lug nuts. Talk to me in sniffles and broken legs.
Yep. Well, that resonates with me because I have children and we just had COVID in our house, so I'm over. I need to get outside. But I was going to ask Gustavo to that point about programs and not tools. If you've seen what I've seen a lot, like, so we had this thing that happened a while ago. It was like a pandemic, and everybody had to get shoved into a remote workforce, and everybody and their brother was buying tools. There was like a stop almost for like a year. So you could support a remote work staff, you could secure a remote work staff, so on and so forth. And there was a lot of it was like kind of knee-jerk purchases made to get that, up and running. Are you seeing, Gustavo, a lot of it's clustery now when you're getting into new client environments, trying to kind of course correct what happened to knee-jerk reaction to the situation we were in and course correct and continue to now maybe look at the tools and go back and start refocusing on a program mindset rather than a tooling mindset? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense. And at the time, yes, some business owners they had to accept some risks because it was a quick thing. There was a quick turnaround on buying a lot of tools, right, to support the remote workers at the time, and the shifted on the focus shifted focus on that has been done in a very paceful way, making sure that, hey, you understand that this is a risk now, and I'm sure you guys saw the uptick on business email compromise and phishing emails, not campaigns, but phishing emails that started attacking those remote workers. So that pushed the security controls to be less network-based to endpoint-based. So that's also a shift in mindset for not only for the security specialists or the security people, but also at the C-level or stakeholder level, because they needed to know, hey, now it's not only about the office, it's about the office and the home of the people who are working from the office. And not only home, but I would say the endpoint that the person and the remote workers is using. So we need to have that kind of a awareness for both sides, network and endpoint. So there was a lot of conversation, a lot of education, where that is becoming less and less of a friction than it was back almost, I would say more than 3 years ago, right? Today.
Yeah.
Awesome. Really great stuff. So as we sort of start to come to a close here, like, hey, we said the hour goes by pretty fast, right? And I could talk this crap all day long. So one of the things that we like to be able to do as we kind of round out the show is for everybody to take, 30 seconds to a minute-ish, and tell us your one key takeaway for programs, not tools, or NIST 2.0. So we'll kind of go around the room. We're going to start with Jesse. All right, Tim.
Yeah, we'll go clockwise. So mine is really just progress, right? So progress is that's what you're going to see in programs, and you won't see that in tools. You're going to manage, and you're going to slowly get better at making progress and managing risk. So go ahead, Jesse.
Yeah, again, we talked about it in the title, tactics over tools. And I think a takeaway for me, because it's top of mind, is using the FAIR model, those 6 types of loss, building anecdotes, stories, and say that in your client's vernacular and use those to start good conversations with your client.
The big vernacular word. Love it.
Bravo.
I can't even use vernacular. That's my thing.
Go ahead, Gustavo. You're on.
Gustavo.
Yeah, cybersecurity is a journey. Not you have to make sure that you are always increasing your cybersecurity maturity level. It's always going to change. So keep accountability on the people who are responsible for each one of the security controls, but also making sure that your security program is evolving with the threat landscape that is out there. That's
awesome. Maria.
I would say understand first and foremost the business. You can't secure it if you don't understand it. You can't govern a security program. You can't build a security program. So you understand the business first. Do that first.
Awesome. I love it. And I would say probably a lot of what you've all said, which is understand the business, right? You hear me say all the time, start someplace, do something. But I would actually take that a little bit different. And I would say, have the pizza relatable conversation with your pizza client. Don't be talking, nuts and bolts to the pizza manufacturer, and don't be talking, pepperoni to the lug nut shop. Speak to them in their terms, speak to them in their stuff, and make it relatable. The more you can relate yourself in their business, the better off you're going to get a seat at the table.
Yep. Awesome. Next week, a couple announcements, and we're going to roll out. IT Nation, come check us out. Thursday, 3:30. Don't know the room. Team Tim plus Alex Farling. Well, 2/3 of Empath. Let's call it that. Kyle Christensen and Alex Farling. Metrics that matter. The question I asked Gustavo. We're gonna ramble on that for 45 minutes. So come see us in Orlando.
And next week.
No, that's 2 weeks away. Next week, we have a special on insider threat, but we're really talking about IP, trade secrets, people keeping their proprietary and intangible stuff intact in-house, which really, cybersecurity programs and trade secret programs are really starting to collide. We have some people I used to work with in the IP industry, a very big consulting firm. We're excited to have her on as well, but join that episode. I think it's going to have a lot of, I'm really trying to get takeaways that you can relate to the customer with. If you ask a customer, have they ever had a client, an employee walk out with a customer list, it's going to strike a nerve, right? And you're just trying to strike a nerve. So I think this conversation is great. I think it's going to get your wheels turning on things you can bring as an MSP or an MSSP to your customers. So that's it, Tim. We good?
I was almost gonna get my mute hammer out. Like,
yeah.
When I say 30 seconds to a minute, like timekeeper, right? Because as we're governing the program, we are 2 minutes over.
Tim is having major issues with overtime right now.
He does it all the time now. It's all good.
I'm good. I was just giving him crap. So
subscribe now.
Oh, wow.
Just